3 bone-chilling true horror stories that haunt you at midnight. Volume 2. The clock struck midnight, and the air turned dense with anticipation. In the flickering light of a dying candle, 3 stories slither into existence. Tales whispered in the dark corners of homes, where shadows dance and every creak of the floorboards could be a specter coming home. Legends of an abandoned asylum, an old gravedigger, and a cursed mirror linger over our heads like a storm cloud waiting to burst. The kind of stories that burrow deep in your mind and curl around your heart. If you dare to listen, they might just haunt your dreams. The first tale takes us to the notorious Ravenswood Asylum, shrouded in an atmosphere thick enough to cut. It had stood empty for decades, its walls stained with memories that screamed of terror. Local kids dare each other to venture inside, but only the bravest ever return. On nights racked by uncertainty, the sound of anguished cries reportedly echoed through the brittle air, rattling the windows like trapped souls begging for release. What had happened in those darkened halls? Some say they still walk among the living, forever searching for solace. Then we dive into the life of Old Man Macpherson, the gravedigger whose hunchbacked silhouette haunted the cemetery's edge. Under the pale glow of the moon, he bent and dug, uncovering secrets that the earth longed to keep buried. Whispers of a dark pact with the dead slipped through the lips of the superstitious townsfolk. They claimed he could bring the souls of the departed back to life, but at a grave price. One fateful night, a shiver-inducing storm rolled in, and as the lightning split the sky, a shadow appeared at the edge of the graveyard. What had he unearthed that night, and who, if anyone, came back with him? And finally, we encounter the infamous mirror that sits in the corner of the Darnell house, draped in an old cloth that no one dares to lift. They say it shows not your reflection, but your worst nightmare. One unfortunate soul who gazed too long reported seeing the face of a stranger with eyes ablaze, twisted in anguish before it shattered into a million pieces. Is it cursed? Or is it merely a gateway to something more sinister lurking behind reality? The tales warn. Once you gaze into the abyss gazes back. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Now, back to our spine-chilling tales. As the stories intertwine, a nagging thought creeps in. Are these mere figments of imagination, or do they lurk just beyond the veil, waiting to be unleashed? As the candle sputters, casting long shadows that bend and twist in the silence, one question remains. What horrors lie at midnight beyond the stories we tell? The eerie silence hung thick as the candle flickered weakly, its flame casting tremulous shadows across the dim room. With every minute that passed, the air seemed to pulse with an ancient, restless energy. What would become of those who dared to confront the secrets hidden within each tale? The distance echoed with distant whispers, weaving through the cracks of the old house, almost as if the stories themselves were trying to break free. The Ravenswood Asylum haunted the dreams of those nearby. Some say it was the ghosts of the lost souls, their hollow cries echoing through the night, while others believed it was the twisted remnants of mind-altering experiments. No one had been brave enough to enter after the last of the courageous kids returned, their faces drained of color, wide eyes bearing witness to unimaginable horror. On one such fateful night, a group of friends decided to challenge fate. Driven by the allure of forgotten legends, Kevin, Emma, and Jake made their way to the asylum. The creaking gates swung open like a mouth ready to devour them whole, and as they stepped inside, the rusted hinges protested against their intrusion. It was a dark labyrinth, lined with crumbling walls dripping with memories that clung to the walls like echoes of long-lost sanity. "Did you hear that?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling as a scatter of footsteps seemed to follow them through the dark. "It's just the wind," Jake replied, though he too felt the chill creeping down his spine. But in the distance, they heard a faint cry, like a child lost in despair. Intrigued and terrified, they pressed onward, drawn deeper into the belly of Ravenswood. Meanwhile, Old Man Macpherson remained a fixture by the old cemetery, trembling hands clutching a rusted shovel. Locals kept their distance from him, but in the dead of night, beneath the brunt of thunderstorms, he would delve into the earth, seeking the buried souls he had claimed as his own. The storm had raged for hours, lightning illuminating the sky like cosmic fingers prying the veil between the worlds. He had unearthed something unlike any corpse he had ever encountered, wrapped in shadows that stirred with a wicked life of their own. Old Macpherson's breath hitched as he caught glimpses of the figure slithering from its grave. Was it an echo from the other side, or a new entity bent on making this world its own? Back in the Darnell house, the neglected mirror loomed ominously. With a rusted frame and surface dulled by time, it still radiated a disturbing allure. After witnessing the shattering of reality, many had taken to ignoring it entirely, fearing the reflection of their darkest selves. But on a stormy night, as the increasingly vibrant lightning illuminated the dim corners of the room, Sarah couldn't resist the pull. As she brushed away the thin sheet of dust, her heart raced. With every moment, her reflection morphed into something sinister, warping and twisting into contorted versions of herself, each one more grotesque than the last. Panic rose, tightening its grip. Could she escape whatever doom lurked behind the glass? Suddenly, the candle flickered violently, and deep whispers filled the air, each story crashing into one another like thunder rolling through the darkness, creating a cacophony of dread. The asylum, the gravedigger, the mirror, they were all entwined, hungry, waiting for the unwitting souls to step into their grips. Would those brave enough to uncover the truth be the very ones who would open the gate between their world and something far more dreadful? The candle dimmed. In the absolute quiet that followed, a chilling thought crawled into the collective awareness. What if the tales were not mere stories at all but a prelude to a much darker awakening? The air felt heavier now, like a lead blanket smothering them as Kevin, Emma, and Jake ventured further into the asylum's maw. Distorted shadows danced around them, mocking their every breath. Each step echoed like a taunt, calling them deeper into the forsaken corridors where madness had once reigned. Where do we even go from here? Emma's voice cracked. She paused, straining her ears against the almost palpable silence. It was deceptively calm, but the very stillness felt like a predator lying in wait. Maybe we should just head back, Jake suggested, a tremor threading through his words. The earlier bravado had faded, leaving behind a gnawing anxiety. But curiosity had already sunk its claws into Kevin. We need to see what's down that hall. He pointed toward a flickering light in the distance, its glow alive like a beacon in the suffocating darkness. The trio exchanged hesitant glances, but, just as fear threatened to overwhelm them, the pitiful wails, echoing from the end of the corridor, pushed them forward. They moved as if compelled by an unseen force, urgency propelling them through the filthy air. As they reached the light, they found a room lined with mirrors. Not the old, cracked glass of the Darnell house, but polished and pristine as if they had been newly hung. And in each reflection, they saw not just themselves but the shadows behind each other, tendrils of darkness that seemed to stretch and sway, eager to caress their skin. What the hell? Emma stepped back, her breath catching in her throat. This isn't right. Then she heard a soft laugh, sweet yet sinister, floating through the air. It twisted like a serpent around her, and she recognized it instantly, an echo of her childhood. The laughter of her sister, lost too soon. "Help me," cried, the voice breaking. Suddenly, the mirrors pulsed, reflecting fractured images of crowing childhood in one instant and horrific screams in the next. "Emma!" Jake shouted, gripping her shoulder. "Don't look." But it was already too late. Emma's eyes were glued to her reflection, now showing her sister's face twisted in grief, trapped inside the glass. I need to help her," she moaned, lost as the shadow behind her began to engulf her, whispering terrible promises of reunion, connection. Kevin grabbed her hand. "No, don't let it pull you in. but his voice felt like a mere whisper against the insistent calling of the mirrors. He knew he had to draw her back, but the shadows swirled like a tempest, threatening to swallow him whole as well. Meanwhile, Old Man McPherson stood over the odd figure that had emerged from the shallow grave. It was shifting with a form they could barely comprehend, part human, part something else, something deeply wrong. Its eyes found his, glimmering with a hunger that sent ice cascading through his veins. "What have I unleashed?" he gasped, sweat dripping down his brow. The entity opened its mouth wide, letting out a howl that sent tremors through the earth, rattling the tombstones of the long-forgotten dead. Back in Ravenswood, Kevin felt a surge of dread flood his heart as the darkness clawed at them all. He could see it now, a wall of shadow snakes closing in, hungry for their fear. They weren't just stories anymore. They were alive. "Run." He pulled Emma, but she resisted, the cruel grip of the mirror holding her captive. "We have to break it. Find something to smash the glass." But as they searched frantically, the shadows multiplied, whispering secrets that chilled to the bone. The asylum had not only stored the tales of despair but the very dark energy of those who had long lingered there. The chandelier overhead shattered, sending shards raining down like gleaming stars. Panic erupted. Kevin's heart thundered in his chest as he moved to protect Emma, but in the chaos, they stumbled back, and the thin veil separating their world from something much darker started to tear. Would their desperation for freedom spill into the streets, awakening whatever lay beneath the veil? And what horrors awaited the unwitting souls drawn to the pulse of that dark power? A thunderous clap resonated from above as the whispers grew in intensity. They were hungry and far from finished. The shadows lunged, a living entity weaving between their frantic movements. They flickered, darting like errant flames. Kevin felt the icy tendrils brushing against the back of his neck, creeping down his spine. This was no mere asylum. It was a fortress of despair, a liar posing as a sanctuary for lost souls. "Emma!" he bellowed again, pulling harder on her wrist. But the reflection in the mirror was not hers anymore. It was a hollow version, with empty eyes staring back, beckoning as if to say she could escape her pain if she only succumbed. "No!" Jake shouted, desperation thick in his voice. "You need to fight it. You're stronger than this." With a sudden surge of clarity, Emma turned her gaze from the mirror, shaking her head violently. "I want to let it take me." The shadows hissed, but she felt Kevin's grip anchor her, solid and reassuring. "Smash it," Kevin yelled, glancing desperate at the nearest object, a rusted chair half buried in debris. He sprinted to it, dragging it to the center of the room as Jake tried to pull Emma away from that horrific reflection. "Help me," she cried, her voice pierced with anguish as the shadowed arms clutched tighter, a physical embodiment of her grief pulling her towards despair. Kevin swung the chair above his head, channeling every ounce of fear and fury. "Get away from her." He swung down hard, and the wood splintered against the glass. A spiderweb of cracks erupted, breaking the mirror's hold on Emma. The room trembled, the shadows recoiling like a wounded animal. Emma gasped, breaking free, and Jake caught her just in time, pulling her away from the remnants of her mirrored torment. "Come on," he shouted as he spotted the glimmer of daylight peeking through a cracked window at the far end of the room, an almost mythical beacon of hope in a world drowned by darkness. They bolted toward it, but the shadows surged again, furious at their escape. Black tendrils snaked out, reaching for them with a vengeance. With each step, Kevin could hear the whispers growing louder, their cold threats curling into his mind. "You can't run. You can't hide," they seemed to chant. Jake and Emma pushed through the door, bursting into the hallway, but Kevin hesitated. His heart pounded while shadows writhed behind him, waiting eagerly. Something deep inside urged him to linger, to look back. A low rumble echoed throughout the asylum, shaking the walls, dust falling like tears from a morning sky. The thing that Old Man McPherson had awakened, its howl still reverberating, sent chills down his spine. "Kevin!" Emma's shout jolted him back to reality. He turned and ran, desperation driving his legs faster than ever before, nightmares clawing at his mind as they reached the end of the corridor. the air thickened again, heavy with dread. The flickering lights above began to dim ominously, plunging them into near darkness. Then, a voice, smooth and dreadful, slithered into Kevin's ear. "You think you can leave? The darkness always claims what it desires." His heart raced. They were close, but could they truly escape? A deafening crash echoed behind them as the mirrors shattered completely, unleashing a wave of energy that sent them sprawling against the wall. A swirl of shadow rushed outward, engulfing the room, ready to reclaim what it had lost. "Go! Go! Now!" Jake shouted, rallying them even as the darkness pulled at their heels. But there was an unmistakable pull in Kevin's chest. Was something still waiting for him there? Was it mere instinct or an unseen connection drawing him back? As they stumbled forward, Jason turned to face the approaching storm, a silhouette rising amidst the chaos. "Do you know what you've released?" Taunted, Kevin glanced back, fear clawing at his insides. "What have we done?" In the whirlwind of shadows and whispers, one question hung in the air. Had they truly escaped, or would the darkness claim them all? With that uncertainty folded into the fabric of their desperate flight, they burst into the night, but outside the asylum, a new terror awaited. The night air outside felt thick with tension, as if the world itself held its breath. Kevin stumbled after Jake and Emma, adrenaline coursing through him, but as they broke free from the asylum's oppressive grip, he paused, staring back at the darkened entrance. What had they unleashed? "Kevin, we need to go," Emma urged, her voice trembling. The tremors in her hands spoke of the horror they had just escaped. Kevin turned to her, catching the raw fear in her eyes. Those shadows could still be alive within that cursed place. Right. He nodded, forcing himself to follow them as they hurried into the open. The moon hung low, illuminating a twisted landscape of abandoned vehicles and peeling paint. Vines crept over rusty metal, reclaiming what humanity had discarded. But outside the asylum's walls, the shadows danced differently, creeping along the ground, whispering sweetly as they beckoned. Kevin could still feel the pull, an echo of a dark connection that seemed to understand him more than he did himself. The voice from within called for him, a whisper that promised answers, closure, or perhaps even reunions. "Did you hear that?" Jake asked, scanning the area as they approached a derelict car. His brow furrowed, eyes darting as if sensing something lurking in the darkness. Kevin strained to listen, but the only sound was the rustling of leaves carried by the wind, mixed with the faint hum of distant sirens. "Let us just get out of here," Emma insisted. They reached the car, its body a rusting relic of a life once lived. While Jake rummaged through its contents, Kevin caught a glimpse of the asylum behind them, a shadow looming just beyond the threshold of the night. A flicker caught his eye, a silhouette darting behind the crumbling walls. "Wait," he shouted, breath quickening. "Did you see that?" "What now?" Jake asked, looking over with irritation. "No, I'm serious. Someone's in there." Kevin felt a chill run down his spine, pulling him towards the nightmare. "Stop this, Kevin. We need to leave," Emma snapped, panic etched into her features. Her hands gripped his arm, trying to ground him, but the lingering shadows of the asylum called to him, thrumming in time with his heartbeat. Then, a scream echoed from the direction of the asylum, a sound that twisted his stomach into knots. It cut through the night, shredding the relative calm they'd escaped into. "Let us go. Now!" Jake yelled, finally appearing beside them with his free hand clutching a set of keys, old and tarnished but perhaps full of hope. They scrambled into the car, and while Jake fumbled with the ignition, Kevin glanced back once more toward the asylum, his heart teetering on the edge of resolve and temptation. A shadow shifted, morphing into something more solid. "You can't escape me," it growled, forming into the visage of a twisted figure. Something clicked in Kevin's mind. That voice, it echoed with familiarity. "Forget it," Jake shouted amidst the chaos. "Just drive." With one last tortured glance, Kevin looked away as darkness encapsulated the asylum, pulling away with an ethereal grip. Jake started the car, its engine sputtering before roaring to life. As they sped away, Kevin couldn't shake the image from his mind. What horrors lay behind them? And why did it feel like part of him was still chained to that place? The road stretched ahead, lit by the pale moon, but darkness pooled behind them, trailing like a sinister shadow. As they raced into the unknown, one thought haunted him. Had they only exchanged one nightmare for another? Where are we headed? Emma asked, her voice now a whisper. I don't know, Kevin replied, the uncertainty gnawing at him. But we have to find out what we awakened the chilling realization that the nightmare was far from oversettled in his chest. As they turned onto an unmarked road, another scream pierced the night, vague but purposeful, echoing past the boundaries of reality. What awaited them down that path was still a mystery, and one thing was clear. The true horror had only just begun. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the twisted trees lining the road. Each shadow flickered as if alive, clawing at the car, yearning to pull them back into the abyss they narrowly escaped. Emma's breathing was swift and shallow beside Kevin, her eyes wide with fright. Where is this road taking us? She whispered, a tremor lacing her voice. Anywhere but back there, Kevin replied, gripping the door handle to steady himself. But as the trees grew denser, his resolve wavered. The memory of the asylum surged back. That feeling of being watched, hunted. It clung to him like a second skin. Jake focused on the road ahead, his jaw clenched tight. We just need to get to the highway. We can figure things out from there. But Kevin knew the truth. They were running, not from the asylum, but from the darkness within themselves. What if it was already following them? Another scream rang out. This one was closer, unmistakably human, echoing through the night like a ghostly bell tolling. Kevin's heart raced, painfully aware that something was wrong. Did you hear that? He gasped. What now? Jake snapped, frustration breaking through the tension. We shouldn't ignore it. We can't. Kevin's voice stumbled over itself. What are we supposed to do? Drive down every road until we find whatever it is? Jake thundered. No, Emma interjected, her voice hardening. We need to see what's happening. We can't just leave someone. Are you insane? Jake fired back, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The argument floated in the cramped space, the air thickening with emotion and fear. Kevin felt his grip on reality growing weaker, as uncertainty gnawed at him like a hungry beast. Stop, he shouted suddenly. Let us pull over. Jake hesitated but reluctantly turned the wheel, pulling the car to the side of the unpaved road. They were enveloped in darkness, the only light spilling from the car's flickering headlights. Silence fell heavily afterward, suffocating, broken only by the soft hum of the engine and the distant rustle of leaves. Are you sure about this? Jake asked, his voice lower now. I have to know, Kevin said, already opening the door. A breeze whipped through, cold and taunting, wrapping around him like a tainted embrace. With a glance at Emma, who didn't argue this time, he stepped out. Something stirred in the depths of the shadows ahead. Stay close, he instructed her. But Kevin felt this creeping sensation returning, the haunting familiarity pulling him forward. They crept further, each footfall echoing with dread. As they ventured deeper into the thicket, the screams transformed into something else. Laughter? It slithered around them, disorienting and wrong. Do you feel that? Emma's voice was now a whisper of fear. Yeah, Kevin breathed, suddenly aware of the orange glow seeping through the trees. They followed it, the laughter growing louder until they reached a clearing that opened wide before them. A fire flickered at the center, casting twisted shadows that moved like they were alive. Surrounding the fire stood figures, their faces obscured, and their voices harmonized into grotesque mirth. What the hell is this? Jake murmured, voice trembling. Kevin stood frozen, the even darker whispers from the asylum creeping back into his mind. He felt that same pull, the familiar echo returned, promising knowledge but wrapped in darkness. One of the figures turned, a glint of recognition sparking within hooded eyes as they focused on Kevin. Welcome back, he spoke, the voice rich with expectation, dripping with something sinister that sent waves of nausea surging through Kevin. What have you done? Kevin gasped, as understanding dawned, horrified but entranced. With every heartbeat, the gravity of their choices surged. The shadows beckoned, blurring the lines between predator and prey. They had turned down the wrong road entirely. "What's happening?" Emma asked, her own voice now laced with dread. Just then, a chorus of laughter erupted, filling the air with a chilling resonance, drowning out her words. Kevin's body turned to stone as the figures closed in, lips twisted with malicious glee. "Let us find out together," one of them rasped, advancing. The night stretched out, taut with anticipation. Kevin's world narrowed. The dark truth of their choices began to take shape. What they would discover next would unravel the very fabric of their being, revealing secrets best left buried. And that was when the fire flared up, illuminating the ground beneath, revealing a truth they never wanted to face. The ground beneath Kevin's feet radiated heat, and the flickering flames cast an eerie light on everything it touched. He stumbled back, but there was nowhere to go. The figures surrounded him, their laughter bubbling like a dark melody that warped the air. "What is this?" Emma's voice trembled, eyes darting from figure to figure as she clutched Kevin's arm, her grip tight and pleading. "Are you afraid?" One of the hooded figures cooed, the voice low and silky. "You don't need to be. You are home now." Kevin's heart pounded. Home? The word resonated hollowly in his mind. He could feel the asylum again, the weight of its whispers wrapping around him, tugging at the edges of his sanity. "Home?" he echoed, desperation clawing at his throat. "What do you mean?" The figure stepped forward, face still hidden, but its presence loomed large, suffocating. "The truth you seek, it's so much closer than you think." A shudder coursed through Kevin. He glanced at Jake, who stood stark still, jaw clenched. "We need to get out of here," Jake urged, eyes darting, panic palpable in his voice. But the figures were drawing closer, fast. Shadows flickered towards them. "Leave? Why would you wish to leave? The revelation's waiting for you." Suddenly, the fire exploded into a swirling tempest of flames, illuminating the clearing. Kevin shielded his eyes, but what he saw next made his blood run cold. The ground wasn't just dirt, it was littered with bones, human bones. Some were cracked, others still wrapped in scraps of decaying flesh. "Dear God," Emma gasped, her face pale under the golden light of the flames. "Join us, Kevin," the figure invited, arms outstretched as if beckoning him into an unholy embrace. "You have always been a part of us. Don't you remember?" Memories surged like a tidal wave, laughter, screams, desperate faces twisted in agony, shadows that seemed to whisper his name in the darkness. It was all colliding in his mind. Every late-night confession, every decision that led them here began to play out in terrifying clarity. "No!" Kevin shouted, backing away further until he collided with Jake, who pulled him back to reality. "Don't listen!" Jake shouted. "They're trying to trap you." But Kevin couldn't shake the echoing laughter, the memories flooding back like moths drawn to the light. The whispers were now spilling into his ears, promises of understanding threaded with shadows of despair. He felt his resolve cracking. "Don't you see? This is what you wanted," the figures chorused, their voices melding into a cacophony that reverberated through Kevin's very core. "Freedom comes from truth." Emma tugged at his sleeve, her fear palpable. "Kevin, please. We can't let them take you." The fire crackled and popped as the figures loomed closer, their obscured faces eager, hungry. The scent of burnt wood and something more acrid filled the air. "No!" Kevin yelled as if the word could sever the grip tightening around him. "I won't let this happen." With a surge of adrenaline, he grabbed Emma's hand, pulling her toward the edge of the clearing. But Jake was still frozen, torn between the echoes of the asylum and the urgency of the present. "Kevin," Jake hissed, breaking the spell cast over him. "We need to run." Before they could make their escape, one of the figures lunged forward, grasping Kevin's shoulder with a cold, bony hand. "You are ours, Kevin," it hissed, and the air around them thickened. Suddenly, a blinding light exploded from the fire, blurring Kevin's vision. "Run!" he shouted again, feeling the grip of whatever shackled them too strong, too real. The laughter turned to shrieks, as if the darkness itself was unraveling before him, With their hearts racing, they bolted into the woods, the path ahead shrouded in uncertainty. Yet even as they fled into the depths of the trees, Kevin felt the pulsating pull behind him. As branches whipped past them, an unsettling thought dawned on him. Did he truly escape, or were they just hurtling deeper into something far worse? The haunting laughter dissolved into the night, but the echo of those words remained. You are ours, and then Chilling truth hit him. What if running wasn't enough? What if they were never meant to leave? The darkness loomed ahead, ready to swallow them whole. What awaited them behind the next bend in the road felt far more sinister than anything they'd left behind. The trees closed in around them like a dark curtain, branches clawing at their skin as they ran. Kevin's breath came in ragged gasps, panic threading through every ounce of his being. He pulled Emma closer, the warmth of her hand a tether to reality amidst the chaos. But even that comfort began to feel distant. Where are we going? Emma shouted, her voice strained with urgency. We can't just run blindly. The path twisted, contorted by the shadows of the towering trees that loomed above. I don't know, Kevin replied, glancing over his shoulder. The flickering light had faded, leaving only thick darkness behind. Yet the echo of the figures' voices followed them, a taunting reminder of their sinister words. You are ours. Jake dashed ahead, a blur of frantic energy, his face buried in a mix of fear and determination. This way, he called, veering off the main path. Kevin and Emma followed as the dense brush swallowed them whole. With every thundering footstep, the memory of those bone-littered grounds nagged at Kevin's mind. Did the figures still watch? Were they just beyond the trees, merging with the shadows? The air grew colder, wrapping around them like icy fingers. What if this is a mistake? Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. A shudder rippled through Kevin as he fought to keep the dread at bay. What if we're walking right into their trap? Trust me, he urged, although he couldn't even convince himself. As they pressed deeper into the woods, the darkness felt alive, breathing alongside them, dripping with the weight of unspoken truths. Suddenly, a guttural growl shattered the silence, causing all three of them to halt. Kevin's heart dropped. It was low and rumbling, seeping out of the shadows like the shadows themselves had come to life. What was that? Jake breathed, eyes wide with terror. Before anyone could respond, a figure lunged from the trees. It was fast, too fast. Kevin barely had time to register the glimpse of a face twisted with malice before it barreled into Jake, sending him sprawling to the ground. Jake! Kevin shouted, instantly feeling the heat of the fire's aftermath eclipse under the icy grip of fear. Jake scrambled to his feet, the breath knocked from his lungs. The creature turned its attention to them, a grotesque mix of human and beast, with matted hair and a wide, hungry grin that revealed jagged teeth. The air felt heavy with the scent of decay, overwhelming Kevin's senses. Run! Emma screamed, and they were off again, hearts pounding like drums in a war of survival. They dashed through the underbrush, flinging aside branches and avoiding the sticky grasp of tendrils that seemed to spring from the ground itself, trying to ensnare them. But in the chaos, Kevin stumbled, pain shooting through his ankle as he twisted it against a gnarled root. He fell hard onto the ground, gasping as the world spun. No, not now. Emma skidded to a halt, her face pale with fear. Kevin, come on, she cried out, voice trembling. The creature was close, its growls morphing into shrieks that sent shivers down Kevin's spine. He struggled to stand, panic surging through him as he watched Emma's determination falter. Just leave me, he begged, desperation pouring from him. But Emma would not abandon him. She rushed back, her eyes fierce. Never. In that moment, something deep within Kevin ignited a surge of determination to protect Emma and Jake no matter the cost. With a roar that surprised even himself, he surged to his feet, adrenaline lifting him as he grabbed Emma's hand. Let us go. They plunged back into the thicket, not looking back as the horrifying shrieks grew louder. The figures, they're still coming, Jake shouted, his panic uncontainable. Deep in the woods, they stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight, and there stood an old dilapidated structure, a forgotten ruin swathed in ivy. Hope flared even amongst the terror. "In there!" Kevin yelled, leading the charge as they barreled through the crumbling entrance. A deafening roar erupted outside, and the shadows danced at their heels, teasing them just beyond the threshold. But the door cracked open, revealing something truly unimaginable within. What is that?" Emma gasped, her voice trembling as she uncovered secrets lying deep in the dark. And there, illuminated by the weak light, a chilling sight lay waiting, a wall adorned with whispers that revealed more than they could ever fathom. Kevin's heart raced. Could the real horror still be lurking just ahead? Would they find answers or face something even more sinister? The dim light flickered, revealing the contours of the ruin. Dust motes danced in the air, caught like tiny ghosts in the fractured beams. Kevin clenched Emma's hand, heart hammering as he stepped inside, each crack underfoot echoing through the suffocating silence. "What do you see?" Jake asked, squinting into the twilight shadows. Just the wall," Kevin breathed, his mind racing. "But it's covered in writing. Look." The words twisted in and out of view as Kevin leaned closer, trying to decipher the madness scrawled across the crumbling stone. He felt Emma's breath quicken beside him, fear reflecting in her wide eyes. "What does it say?" she whispered, a fragile edge of hope battling her fear. "I can't make it out," his brow furrowed. The letters seemed to pulse, dark and alive, taunting him with secrecy. Suddenly, the low growl returned, curling around them like smoke, a reminder of the terror still hunting them. "We don't have time for this," Jake hissed, glancing back toward the door as if expecting the creature to burst in. Kevin's eyes darted around the room, searching for anything they might use. A broken chair lay in one corner, its wood splintered and dangerous, but it was better than nothing. "We need to find something. Anything. Breathe," he urged himself. "What are we facing? There could be a way to deal with it." The walls seemed to close in, and the whispers grew louder, teasing hints of their true nature. They were no longer just words. They felt alive, almost sentient. And then he noticed something else. A figure carved into the stone. "What is that?" Emma pointed. The relief held for just a moment. Kevin could see the outline of a man, no, a creature, its eyes hollow and wide, as if it were watching them. It seemed to shift slightly, the shadows bending unnaturally around the figure. "This can't be good." "Step away from the wall," Jake shouted suddenly, grabbing both their arms and pulling them back as if by instinct. The whispers changed, shifting from cryptic murmurs to a frenzy of incoherent screams. Kevin's heart raced, the terror spilling into every inch of the air, making him feel like he was suffocating. "What have we found?" Then the room trembled. Dust rained down from overhead as the entire structure seemed to shudder. The breaths around them became heavy, deep, and painful, wrapping around them like chains. "Run!" Kevin yelled, but the urgency caught in his throat. They had come so close, yet another wave of dread was crashing down upon them. The shadowy figure from the wall began to flicker, as if the darkness had come alive, drawing nearer. Kevin sensed the pull of a trap, an enticement to stay still, to listen to the whispers. But the primal fear to flee overwhelmed him. They turned, scrambling for the exit. Jake reached for the door first, but it was stuck, the old wood refusing to budge. "Damn it," he barked, throwing his body against it. Grabbing Emma, Kevin threw himself against the door too. "Push!" Fingers trembled as they pressed against the threshold, but it wouldn't yield. The growl intensified, reverberating throughout the stones, echoing the death knell of their bravery. With one final heave, the door burst open, sending them tumbling headfirst into the night. They landed hard on the ground, gasping for breath as they scrambled back to their feet. But the figure loomed just outside the ruin. It was no longer just shadows. It stepped out fully, eyes glowing with hungry anticipation. "You thought you could escape?" The three friends froze, the cold grip of horror freezing time. It was then Kevin realized the whispers hadn't just warned them. They were calling them. "Run!" Emma screamed, pulling Kevin back into the forest, but dread settled deep within his chest. What if they had awakened something they could never truly escape? Behind them, The monster's laughter mingled with the howling wind, swirling like a tormenting echo of their greatest fears. As they raced deeper into the woods, Kevin couldn't shake the feeling that they were running toward an even darker truth. And as new shadows flitted among the trees, question loomed. What if they were never really alone? The forest closed in around them, branches whipping at their faces as they sprinted, hearts pounding against their ribcages. Kevin's mind raced. Each section of underbrush seemed to stretch into an endless waltz of terror. Another scream echoed behind them, twisting in the wind, reminding them that they had not simply escaped the asylum but stirred something ancient. Keep going, Emma urged fiercely, her grip locked onto Kevin's wrist. What if it's still coming? Jake shouted, panic sharpening his voice. Kevin caught sight of furtive shapes weaving through the trees, phantoms flitting just out of sight. Their laughter, a sinister melody, slithered through the leaves, taunting them. Were those the figures from the clearing? Had they truly left it all behind? Their breath came ragged, each gasping inhalation weighted with desperation. Without warning, Kevin stumbled over a root, falling hard to the ground. Go, he yelled, wrestling against the impulse to look back. But Emma skidded to a halt, her face a blend of fear and determination. I won't leave you, she cried. Just go. He screamed, forcing himself to face the darkening woods. You need to get out. I'll hold it off. No way. Jake's voice was urgent, his eyes aflame with conviction. We need to stick together. That's how we survive this. As if punctuating his words, a low growl resonated through the air, slithering from the shadows like a serpent. The realization crashed over Kevin like icy water. All they faced was undeniably real, hunting them without mercy. Trust me, Kevin urged, pulling himself back to his feet, adrenaline pumping through him. We have to keep moving. We can't let it close in. They turned and dashed further into the darkness. The shadows hungered, creeping along the ground, whispering promises of despair and regret. But then Kevin spotted it. A flash of light, flickering like a heartbeat, cutting through the dense gloom ahead. This way, he shouted, sprinting toward the source as hope crackled to life in his chest. It was a small clearing, illuminated by what looked like was that firelight. They rushed toward it, hope and fear entwining. With resolve stealing their resolve, they burst into the small space and froze. The fire blazed, casting playful shadows against the towering trees. But the warmth felt different, unsolicited, almost invasive. The three of them exchanged glances, confusion knitting their brows. Were they truly safe? In front of the fire stood the figures, their outlines shifting against the embers until the light illuminated their faces, distorted visages of the people they once knew. Welcome back, one of them hissed, voice curling around them like smoke. Did you enjoy your little escape? No. Emma shouted, panic rising again. We didn't ask for this. You don't get a choice in the matter anymore, the figure replied. You called to us when you opened those old wounds. Suddenly, Kevin recognized the twisted echoes of his past, faces lost. Voices of despair and memories surged, overwhelming him like a tidal wave. This wasn't just a reunion with fear. It was an awakening to the truth of their journey, the darkness they had tried to elude. Enough! Kevin shouted, summoning every ounce of courage. We won't be your puppets. We're stronger than this. The figures twitched, a flicker of something like fear rippling through them. Strength comes from acceptance. Another hissed, the air thickening with anticipation. You can join us or be swallowed whole. The choice is yours. Together, Emma breathed, squeezing Kevin's hand tightly. We faced them together. And with a surge of collective defiance, they charged toward the gathering shadows, strength pooling amongst them like a shield against the encroaching nightmare. Kevin felt the fire within them flicker to life. This was their moment to reclaim the narrative, to pull the threads of their fate from the twisted grasp of despair. Break free, Jake shouted, his voice a battle cry that shattered the silence. The figures recoiled momentarily, and their screams echoed as the fire roared, surrounding the trio in a potent light that pulsed with energy. Shadows shrank back, losing their venomous grip, The clearing pulsed with vibrancy, the cracks of their shared trauma turned into a tapestry of stories bundled together, entwined in their strength. "Let us finish this," Kevin growled, charging forward, and with each step, that fire grew stronger, illuminating the truth hidden beneath the cloak of despair that had bound them. With collective will, they unleashed the energy that flowed through them, a wave of light that surged toward the figures, shattering the bond of darkness that tethered them. The laughter turned from malicious to panicked cries as the shadows writhed, unraveling under the force of their shared strength. As light enveloped the clearing, the last threads of shadow dissolved into nothingness. The echoes faded, leaving a silence that spoke volumes. The fight was over, but the scars remained. Yet here, standing together, they felt the weight of it lift, for they had tasted victory. This new dawn promised hope and healing. Kevin turned to Emma and Jake, hearts racing, but eyes shining bright with an undeniable resilience. Together he breathed the words of vow, and as they stepped back into the world beyond the shadows, Kevin couldn't help but glance over his shoulder at the fading remnants of their trials. They were free, but even in the light of a new dawn, a lingering warmth, the memory of the connection they had formed with the darkness, reminded him that not all shadows were meant to be banished. Some were etched into the very fabric of their being, shaping the story they would choose to write next. And so, as the light flooded the world and with it, the urgency to share their tale, he knew this would not be their final chapter, but rather the beginning. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the continuing tale of Kevin, Emma, and Jake. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and spread the word. You have to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what comes next. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need that next chilling twist. Your support is what keeps this story alive. Only true fans will respond.